Welcome back to another episode of How Are We to Live, where we are asking people from all walks of life how they live, how they are doing and navigating the human condition and the beyond human in these turbulent, cool times. Today, we are lucky to be joined by Daryl Brown. Daryl was a broadcast and corporate TV producer for 35 years and is now a results strategist in online marketing, helping businesses align with sustainable values, creating a lasting impact for businesses and the planet. Yes, I stole this from his LinkedIn. Also known as World's Best Dad, according to some artwork by his sons on his Facebook page. Daryl was a Christian for 4 decades, so we get some little insights onto how his faith is evolving now. We mentioned he's quite into philosophical topics and questions. It was really cool speaking to someone with more experience and seeing how he has worked through these sort of existential worldly queries. So you're in for a treat today, like every episode I'd say, because all the guests on here are slay in their own way. Thank you again, Daryl, for joining us today and this conversation. I truly appreciate it. Anyways, let's get on to the episode. I hope you enjoy listening. Also, I would like to mention, this is really off topic, but I really love the shape of your glasses. They suit you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I went through a stage. I was obviously getting a little bit older. I was losing all this hair and I'm going, now what? I just had to reinvent myself.
The other ones were good too, but these are extra groovy.
Yeah.
Okay if I get into asking you some questions?
Oh, absolutely. No, that's fine.
But my first thing that I wanted to talk with you about, I guess, is you asked me a really cool question where it was, what are the sort of questions that keeps them up at night? And then my first one was, WTF is going on? And then you mentioned that you were comfortable with these questions because you find yourself a bit of a philosopher at heart. So I was wondering, what do you make of this experience? What conclusion have you come to about life?
About where we are and what it's all about, all of that kind of thing. Gee, it has been a long journey in that sense. And I kind of feel I'm at a place where I'm comfortable now. But gee, who knows where it will evolve to in the future. I suppose it comes from different worldviews. So like how I think about the world and all of that kind of thing. And like it is obviously a really big question. The way I used to think about it was I kind of made a decision in my early teens around believing in God and and the easiest way I felt at that time based on my upbringing was to believe in the Christian story of Jesus. And there were a number of big things about that I really was attracted to, and it's around that the idea of grace and of agape love or unconditional love, that kind of thing. And I thought,
agape love is that the same as unconditional love, or?
Yes, that's the kind of I suppose the definition, like it's unwarranted, unmerited, like it's the same kind of thing as with grace. It's like it's unmerited favor, I think, is one of the words that definitions we used to come up with. And I thought, this is really what is at the heart of life anyway. Like this is what it's about. And I was prepared to kind of fully commit to that. And basically, that's what I did. I went full in on that for the next 20, 30 years. But I suppose there's been a little bit of expansion since then, and then just actually asking questions about that tradition and so on. And so my idea of how the world is and how we sit in the cosmos has changed. But in the essence, I think that's still somewhat the same in some ways. That I don't know if I would say now that there's a gracious God looking out for us, like, you know, in his flowing white robes or anything like that. But there is there is an order in the universe, and it's it's awe-inspiring, and it does seem to revolve as well around, well, there's order, and so many people today would say that we're just in a world of complete chaos, and there is everything's random and it's all completely chance. But I would say no, that even if you start looking at science and the way that scientists look at things, which is actually looking at order, looking at replicatable results, that there is order, and it's order to the nth degree. Like, it just keeps going and going and going. So you can go small, you can go large, and you can see echoes, or you can see patterns repeated, right? So whether it's in the smallest detail of the life and the biosphere that happens just under our soil, with all the little bugs and the microbes, converting stuff into nitrogen and then helping the plants and all that kind of stuff, through to like the same kind of society thing that we've got in the world. Through, you go back down into our intestines, and there's a whole world that lives inside there. So there's these worlds within worlds, and there's and patterns are repeated over and over again. There's order in that, and I love that. And what that says to me, and the other order that I see from that, is that it's actually about the force or an energy that's about life. It's about creating. So as opposed to that, we have, we see that, when we look at movies and things like that as well, there's the whole big theme about the energy that is pro-us, pro-life, and then there's the dark force that's about pulling everything down and destroying life and all of that kind of thing. But the energy is really there, like it and it's I think it's comforting, and I think there may well be a personality behind it, because like we are born to survive, and if you look at living things around us, we all have this. It's built into our DNA to grow and to create order out of something where perhaps there wasn't anything. So there's this whole energy in the universe that's about creating order and making sense of things, and we're part of that picture as well. I don't know does that actually then answer your question? What the fuck's going on? I mean, maybe it does.
I mean, it was certainly, it's definitely a very hard question to answer, but that was I love the way that you put it and explain it. Like, I think it's really cool how you're able to articulate it, what you're experiencing and your view so clearly, because I think, that's a really hard thing to do. Yeah, so a question I do have is, so you said that you chose to follow the Christian faith or religion in your early teens, and you were in there for almost 4 decades or something, I think you said, and because that is a lot of people that I know that are in a part of Christianity, it's very, like, I would find it hard to see them ever, like, their beliefs are so strong on it being that certain way. And I know this is a generalization, and I don't know
Yes.
so that's a preface to what I'm saying. But what caused the shift in mindset or belief for you?
Okay. Well, there were a few things that were going on, and there were lots of unanswered questions that you didn't ask in some ways. And there is a culture, I suppose, the Christian culture, especially, let's talk about it as the Western church way, perhaps predominantly even Protestant way of looking at things, quite controlling, and you get shut down when you go outside their views. There is a narrative, and it started back, I suppose you called it the Nicene Creed, which was agreed on in the 2nd or 3rd century. A whole bunch of church leaders got together and hashed out what were the core tenets of their faith at that time. But I'd say that some of them they made a kind of a bit of an error. I'm not quite sure how to explain it in some ways because it's quite complicated. We don't want to go down to the whole church history thing and all that kind of thing. Like you go, oh my goodness, but like that's the kind of rabbit hole I went down with some of this thing. And there were some people coming to my life that kind of challenged some of the ways of thinking about and gave me a perspective on the tribal nature of some of the Christianese or the Christian culture that had kind of grown up around us. And it kind of go, okay. So this is not actually, we were trained in Christianity to say, well, the Bible is it, like everything that the Bible says is true and correct. And it's inspired by God. And therefore, and then preachers and everyone else would actually then turn anything that was in there into something that would suit their narrative. But as you start to break it down and actually look at the Bible, and see it more as a history book, you see that there's a God who is not the same God in the beginning, like in the way that he's presented in the stories. He's not the same natured God as the God that Jesus revealed. So, like 2,000 years ago, or in that, like there was a sense of history of, 1,000 or 2,000 years before that, that's kind of recorded in the Bible stories. So I was going through some of the stuff about history and going, actually, there's a different way of looking at this. And there's a way that we can answer some of these questions. And there's a way that Christian culture might language something. It's not actually reflective of truth, and the way that we might say that a Christian might say that we love you is actually not like it's very conditional. Even though they talk about unconditional love, it's kind of it's like a if you read George Orwell's 1984, it's like double plus speak. It's words that have meanings to suit their purpose, and it's, even though everything is said to mean this thing, there's actually a control thing underneath. So these are the things I kind of discovered. And I looked at points in Christian history. There was 2 or 3 points which seemed to be quite pivotal in making it a kind of a performance-based religion. And these were dramatic changes from what Jesus was actually talking about, and even the way that the Apostle Paul was talking about also got twisted. And there are a whole bunch of books in the Bible that actually weren't written by the people that were said to. And that's quite easy to see. Well, it's not easy to see, but when you get to, so those that speak about it can see quite clearly the different style of language that's used in some of the letters that are written in there, which is contradictory to ones that have been established to be by the actual author. So there's a few of those sorts of things going on, and that results in a few contradictions through the thing, blah, 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 blah. That becomes quite a boring answer, really, doesn't it, in some ways?
Not at all. On that, so what would you say, like, your faith or trust is in now? Do you have words to articulate it now, or is it more just what you were saying before about? Sorry,
there is a kind of I think there's a unifying and maybe a personality. There's a unifying spirit. Then maybe you could talk about spirit that is the creative energy. I think there's obviously no harm in connecting with that spirit or talking to that spirit. But it's like it's that kind of oneness now. So there's Ken Wilber. He's got a book that I've read and I've taken a lot of inspiration from, and I can't even remember what it's called now. It's like one of those. It's something like the theory of the story of everything, or one of those things, like something about that. He talks about the Spirit actually being, how can we say this? It's like all of us together, and the consciousness that we have across all of us is actually the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, if you put it in Christian language, but the Spirit learning and growing. So we are one with God, but we're one with the Spirit. We're one with creation, or the living world. We're one with each other, but we're also part of God in the other way around. So God is us being continually revealed. So his character, well, I say his, but I don't mean that, their character is being revealed. They are learning as we continue to evolve. I don't know if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I see it more. And I'm really kind of quite a lot more relaxed now. Like there's no going to heaven and going to hell. We are on this journey together. In fact, a lot of, I think when we look back at what Jesus was saying, he was saying that God is within. Like it's not like he's outside, he's separate from us. He is actually part of it. And the freedom that we want is already within us. It's not outside. It's not something we have to strive for. So all of those things are part of this as well. It's just it's almost like a relaxing into it and going, yes. And then start seeing around us the things that are happening, I suppose the energy, the life that is evolving. So when we just watch the news, we see a narrative that is, all about the things that are going wrong in the world. But the reality is life is continuing. Good things are happening all around us. There are great things happening between people. There's loving and there's giving and there's growing. And there's new understandings the way we were as the human race compared to, say, 200 years ago. Generally speaking, we've grown up a bit, as a human race. And so there's lots of ways that we can look and see great things that are there. And it's really where we focus our energies and is going to determine how we see this life and whether we see it as just chaotic mess that's going to hell in a handbasket, or whether it's actually there is an evolving, there's a growing, there's a deeper connection happening between people. There's an interest, like we're discussing now, like an interest in wanting to get to know and to be able to connect and to commune and to express the love that we know is the essence of life. We see that that's more around, and there's a greater ability for us to be able to share and to talk about that and to talk about it, across the globe, and then, see the disparities and all that sort of stuff. And, connect back with nature and to actually start to, instead of seeing ourselves as conquerors of the world, just to begin to see that we are part of the world and that we have so much to learn from the world, instead of being, we know everything. And, it's just because of science and everything that we do because we're science. What is that? Like, be humble, start to look and observe what's going on in nature. And like, there is so much more to unfold. And there's so much more that we can gain from as we kind of appreciate what is going on around us just in the natural world. Yeah.
What you were saying about focusing, like what you focus on, you create more of. Where attention goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
My thought is like focusing on the good of the world, and I completely understand what you're saying. But for me personally, it's really hard to hold the two in hand, because on one side there is this like growing consciousness of the world, as you would say, and evolution happening. But then on the other side, there's wars, there's literal wars happening, and just there is atrocious stuff also happening, and it's like, how do you focus on the good because you don't want to ignore that and like turn a blind eye, but if you focus on it too much, like you're watching the news all the time, it's like that's not actually doing anything. So yeah, how do you merge all this?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to hold, for me, we certainly have to hold that in one hand. And there are things that we don't have control over. But then changes happen when individuals change their minds, like when they do things. So for me, it's about, there's a big word called responsibility. We so often in our lives try and avoid taking responsibility. We want to put it on someone else, and we want to make someone else to blame. And it's easy to become a victim and to say, well, it's all happening to me. But I suppose as we grow, then the idea of being able to say, okay, I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for the energy that I carry. I'm responsible for whether I have a good day or not, in that sense. And even though I might have had a shitty upbringing, now that I'm an adult and can choose, then I have some responsibility to be able to do with what I know to make a difference. One of the most powerful, I suppose it's parts of our personality that unifies us and fulfills us is our ability to make a contribution. And in so many ways, it fulfills all of our, you could call them psychological human needs, but our human needs of our personality, of our world. When we start looking for ways that we can actually contribute to make the world a better place, to make our workplace a better place, to make the way that we get up and look at the mirror better for us, to make the inside of our mind a better place. When we start contributing and looking out for others, looking outside of ourselves, yeah, that kind of makes a difference. And I suppose that's where it all starts. It starts with the power of one, and it starts with the power of one decision. And when it's a whole lot of one decisions, then we kind of get, the ball starts rolling. And yeah, so there are some that are, I suppose, powered into the political space. And if you can, it's kind of, even in my Christian days, there was this idea of influence. And everything we do or don't do influences something else. So when we don't do something, that is a statement in itself. When we do something, then again, that is a statement, and it influences the world in which we live. But you kind of get that idea. That makes sense, doesn't it? Where it's about us choosing life and choosing life every day. And choosing life, I suppose it comes down to moment by moment and whatever action we have to be able to choose that. Now, I'm not saying that I've got all my ducks in a row or anything like that, but I suppose that's something. I look at my day now and it's about what energy can I bring to it, but also how am I going to choose to see the world, and how am I going to. One of the things that affects me a lot is to look at people and look at actions and then say, generally speaking, they're doing the best they can with the information, with the education, with whatever it is that they have. That there is no real intention to do bad. That's kind of almost it's a weird reality, because it's easy to judge someone and say, well, they're a prongo, or they're a bad person, and just write them off. You make a judgment, you call it. But in fact, no, they're actually part of us. Like the part of the thing that drives them is the same things that drive us, like when we get down to it. And there's a way of seeing actions that happen, that we observe around us from the external. There's a way of seeing them and looking at them and going, okay, well, what's driving that? And what is a way that we can remediate that without actually just casting them out? Yeah. I had a kind of an example. I don't know if it's a good one or not. My wife and I have an investment property, and it's just been vacated, and it was left in pretty much a mess. And so it's easy to kind of write the previous tenants off. But I'm going, hang on, we don't know what was going on for them. We don't know what was inside of them. We know what we see. We know that there's damage around, and we know, that things are broken. But let's say that they weren't trying to really, just ruin the place or anything like that. What's some other ways that we could look at what happened there? Is it the fact that it's 10 years since we've actually been inside there and things break over 10 years, the paint chips and, things that get holes in them, all that kind of thing. So I'm always kind of coming back to, let's just not write them off yeah. It is a hard road to hoe sometimes because, it just looks like the evidence is right there,
No, that was a great example. That's a good way to visualize it and picture what you're talking about. Something that, because yes, you mentioned like assuming the best of intentions from people, what you're talking about now. So I'm pretty prone to like now anyway, just being like, yeah, exactly what you're saying, that everyone's just doing the best with the knowledge that they have. Like they're doing what they are because they can't do anything else right now. But something that's been coming up is someone asked me the other day, it's really random, but just like, I just feel like you assume like that everyone has good intentions, like, and you assume the best of people, and they're like, they don't. So when you mentioning choosing to believe others have good intentions and how that how positively impacts us. So the other side of the coin, I'm just curious what you think about the implications of that, of the other side of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we think that perhaps, no, that's not true. So you either accept that or you don't. And I think it comes back to the whole thing about worldview in some ways, and then how we see, are we all part of the one, or are we some and they are the others? If you choose to see it that way, and if we choose to see that we live in a world where we have enemies all around us out to try and do us harm, well, that's going to be the world you live in, and that is going to be what you see, and that's what you're going to experience. It doesn't make it any truer than looking at it the other way, to assume that everyone's trying their best, that we've come from backgrounds that have twisted us and have given us limited solutions and how we can make decisions and how we can treat other people. But that doesn't mean we're not, that we're not trying the best, and that we don't genuinely want to get on and want to be able to, have a nice life, And movies are made about the psychopaths and things like that. But if you look at it that's like the chance of a meteorite hitting the Earth, like the existence of these people, like it's very tiny. So the reality is that 99.9% of people around us are not like that. They're just trying to make their way. They're just trying to, and sometimes the way that they do that is to try and bolster themselves up because they feel small, or they're trying to, do things shifty because they don't feel that they've got enough. All those sorts of things. So there's still that basic desire that, they would help their mates. So there's, because we are built for connection. We're built to be able to connect together. And if we, I don't know, if we lose that, then yeah, we lose life. We're choosing not life.
Yeah. So, yes, I completely understand.
Did that answer? I'm not sure that.
Yes, no, I completely understand what you're saying, and all that comes to my mind is the extremes that are happening. Like I keep hearing like I said before, wars and lots about human trafficking, like expediting and Like,
Yeah.
and literal slavery is more happening more now than it was back in the day. And it's just, how do you make sense of those sort of things going on? Like, how do you contend with that in your mind?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, it is a sign of, see, I don't want to say brokenness. I don't really believe in brokenness, but it is a sign of people with worldviews, again, coming back to worldviews, that are so completely at odds to actually how life works, and who think that power and domination are going to lead to satisfaction and fulfillment, and money's going to do the same thing. I don't know when they're going to find out that it doesn't do any of those things. I suppose you've got histories of people who, and we've got whole genres of movies and things that are based around revenge and vengeance. And even if, we go back to the Bible, um, the whole Old Testament was kind of built around the whole vengeance type thing. The stories of tribes attacking other tribes, and then the idea that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was an Old Testament saying, but what predated that was the idea that if you killed my daughter, I'm going to wipe out your village, kind of thing. That was kind of trying to even it up. And then Jesus came along and said, well, no, like, it's not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Like, it's actually, if someone wants to take your thing, then give him the extra stuff as well. So it's I suppose it's instead of closing up and cutting down. The difficult thing is there are still people around who are not aware, and who are striving after things that are not going to get them to where they want to go. They might think they want to go to that place because it'll achieve something else, but we know that as a vehicle, that's not helpful. It's not actually how life works. How do you break through to those people? Yeah, that's a million dollar question, I suppose. It's certainly not. It's certainly not. Yeah, it's certainly not what we can do to just sort of knock on their door and say, "Hey, I've got a revelation for you." It doesn't work like that. So yeah,
Yes. So basically, you do think that they are just other humans that just doing the best they can. It's like, even though, yeah, so it's not inherently, because something that comes up is just like inherent evil,
yeah,
and that's also a big thing in, well, I have not read the Bible, just to preface, but just from other people's inputs that are Christian, like, evil and the devil is a strong, yeah, that's a real thing and real entity.
yeah. Which is, I would suggest, even if like I'm coming up with counters to what I'm going to say in my head already, but I would suggest that the Bible doesn't actually talk about the devil much at all. That in fact, it's actually been more developed outside of the Bible and then interpreted on top of whatever the text is that's there. The idea of hell is also created not necessarily in the Bible, but by others outside and from other cultures. So the Greek culture had a big influence on that. And there was some big philosopher thinkers around the 3rd or 4th century. And again, they kind of wrote, but there's got to be this hell thing. There's got to be this evils. There's got to be this two-way thing. And that kind of came in there. I don't know. I don't know if there's this inherent evil. Even like, I come from a kind of a video and, I suppose, filmmaking interest background. And one of the things they talk about with acting for evil characters is the only way you can make them believable is to actually give them a really, like, a motivation that makes sense, like that we can identify, like that anyone can identify with, which comes back to they're human. Like the reason they're doing what they do is because they sincerely believe that this is the best way to do things. Doesn't make it the best way to do things. It's just the way that they see it. And from their perspective, that's the conclusion they've come to. I don't know how we influence that too much, but I think it is by showing a different way and having more examples. And I think that's the big thing, is being able to see more examples around us of the way to live. And I think that was what Jesus was about in some ways, was saying, look, follow me, not follow me, but live like I do, like do the things like I do. And, and then people will be attracted to you and want to do the things like you do. There was a great story on the news last night. This was a good news story. And it was about a kid who watched his mum gift. I don't know, it's got they have a term for it, but she bought someone else's petrol for the car behind her or whatever, right? And he was impressed. He was at age 8. He was so impressed with that he says that's what he wanted to do. And mum said to him, well, I can give you money and anything, but it won't really. So he started his own enterprise, and he sells all his T-shirts, and he has this T-shirt line. And when he gets the money, he goes and gifts it to someone else.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Because it really made an impact. And that's, again, that idea of contribution, where that is so fulfilling when we were able to help somebody else and to be able to help them to, enjoy their life or to live their life better. So that's kind of, I suppose, one way, and that we can have an influence on the world around us is, again, to be that person, to be that spirit in the world, and therefore be that influence in our communities, and and kind of pay it forward, I suppose, in that way, and just have faith. And that's, again, that idea of faith, but it's faith in the power of goodness, in the power of love, in the basic tenets of human nature. One of the things that I reckon it's Christian thinkers over the years veered off the track, is the idea, and again, this dated back to a Greek guy that became a Christian, is believing that humans are basically evil, like human natures. That's where it kind of like, you're all sinful, that you're all going to hell, kind of thing. And without God, you're all going to hell. And that's a very linear way of looking at it. And yes, there's probably some ways you can say, well, there's a way to look at that. And you say, well, yes, if you don't have love in your heart, and if you don't try and connect, don't start connecting with the bigger world, then yes, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be isolated, and therefore you're in your own hell. You've created your own hell. But yeah, so that's one way to look at that. But to have this evil that's actually evil, that's anti-life. So a living person who's anti-life, it's kind of, I don't know, doesn't seem to make sense. But having said that, yes, there are psychopathic murderers and genocidal maniacs around in the world as well. But again, they reckon they're making the world a better place. Doesn't look like it from this side of the fence, does it?
Something that I've been thinking about is because it seems that you have, even though you've moved away from the organized side of Christianity, it seems that you've gained some positive things from it. And tell me if I'm wrong on that, but also
No, for sure. It's really shaped a lot of, obviously, how I see the world. But it is, it's just getting that. I think I'm evolving in the way that I see God, like God is becoming bigger. Like, so often the God in the Bible was almost like a small king. He was like, he had a throne somewhere, and it was physically there, and he could see over there, and he could see over there. But the idea that, and we don't seem to get it so often, is the spirit, this force, this energy. We know it's ginormous, but we don't. It's a growing comprehension of just what that actually means, how ginormous that actually is. Yeah. Anyway, so you were halfway through a
Oh
question.
no, no, thank you. I heard it put this way that Jesus is basically like a philosopher, and his message, separate from organized religion, is very powerful. It's just like an
Yes.
excuse. And I was just wondering, like, I really resonate with that, and I think that's really cool. I was just wondering, is there any way that you think people can explore Jesus, Jesus's message and philosophy, separate from the human input on it that has been sort of corrupt in some sense?
Yeah. I explored this in my, what do you call it, my de-evolution as a Christian. There are a number of different translations of the Gospels, and they are done from people who are not entrenched in the Christian culture, will experience, like in the dogma and the doctrine, and they're just going with this with the spirit of the words and going back to the original Greek text as far back as they can, and just reinterpreting those from a I suppose you call it the cosmic Christ sense, of like the looking at it in a bigger sense. Instead of a tribal God, it's a cosmic God, and there are a few people that have done that. So those translations are around and offer a different perspective on especially in English, of what the translations have become over the years. So they're valuable. And there's the Gnostic Gospels, and there's a few other things. There's a guy that was quite influential for us as well as we were kind of exploring this, and his name is Father Richard Raw, and he's written a book called The Universal Christ, and that kind of picks up on this. I think it's the universal Christ or the cosmic Christ, something like that. And he's picked up on that idea of the bigness of Christ, and of how to look at some of the events that have happened either in church history or through the context of what's written down in the Gospels, or the New Testament Bible and things like that, and just given different perspective on how you can look at that through the eyes of a non-condemning God, a God that does love us unconditionally and that has no judgment, and who basically is saying we are all saved. But part of that is coming to know that and to accept that. So it's not like something we have to do. It's not something we say at 4:00 on Friday night became saved. Like, no, it's not. It's like we are saved. We're saved from ourselves in some way. We're saved from, I suppose you call it, that ego journey, or that we are saved from being trapped inside ourselves by understanding that there was a different way to live, that there are other ways to look at life. There are other ways to look at the world that actually lead to greater fulfillment, but also greater sense of contribution and a greater sense of connectedness with us all. And there is this all. There is this big family of humans. Yeah. Did that answer anything?
Yes. No, you did. I'm just absorbing it all because, yeah, you just have a lot of insights, and I'm really grateful to be hearing it and taking it all in. So that's just my thinking face.
Yeah.
Um,
I get off on tangents sometimes. I like to know that sometimes I go, what was the question?
but what you were saying about like community and connection building,
Yeah.
that's something that you mentioned. Community
Yeah.
and what binds it together and builds it. And yeah, I guess, how are you creating that sense of community and connection that we need in your life? How are you getting that or creating that?
Yeah. Things have changed, like especially outside of the Christian community now. I don't have kind of an instant family or anything like that. So it is about finding like-minded souls and sharing the journey in that way. The smallest things that we do, I suppose, around our neighbourhood, we've taken over a little bit of the role of occasionally kind of getting the neighbours together and having a kind of drinks on the front lawn, or kind of doing that kind of thing, and setting up a WhatsApp group for the neighbours. And I suppose just so that there isn't that kind of isolation, where you're all just stuck in your own homes. It's it's not a. I must say that it's a little bit hard work because it involves other humans who are on different journeys and who don't all have the same goal in mind. Yeah, so those kind of things are happening. I had other kind of plans years ago, but they haven't. Takes a lot of energy, and I feel sometimes that you do need do need to be having at least a core group of people who are on the same page, and who all have equal energy towards a vision, to be able to sort of be able to continue moving forward without just running out of steam. That's been my experience anyway.
You say that well, I don't know, you don't have to speak about it if you don't want to, but are you referring to when you're saying that you had some other vision in mind, but it takes a lot of energy? I'm just curious about that vision because what I saw from your Facebook with the regenerative, I'm going to
Yeah,
mess up the
leaders.
name if I don't look at it. I don't want to mess it up. But okay, regenerative leaders community. And then
Yeah,
you also shared a video a couple years ago about the upside down leaders community.
yeah.
I'm not sure if they sort of like
It's
merged
kind of
in.
an involvement, and I had this whole picture of growing this group of leaders, and I thought this is, in terms of my contribution, that could be something I could do, is influence leadership styles and the way that leaders relate. Because, if we look at the culture of a country, or even of a business or anything like, a lot of it is shaped by the leader, who, the one who pays the bills, or the one at the top, so to speak. And there was a kind of an idea that we could reimagine this, and there's a number of writers and, I suppose, philosophers who are kind of seeing that, the way that we used to operate in life and in business, where there was a kind of a authoritarian dominating kind of role, and that was what the leader was the one that was always out in front saying, "Come on this way," um, you know, uh, is not necessarily the way forward now, because in some ways, when we talk about leadership, it comes back to that word that I talked about before, responsibility. And what I think the best leaders today will do is encourage others to take up their responsibilities. And so even within an organization or within any other group, there's this idea that we are all equal, and we all have the power within us to move the vision forward, and we all have a responsibility to contribute towards that, and we need to own that responsibility. And so often, with leaders, they're the only ones that are owning it. They're trying to pull things forward, so that comes back to the kind of a coaching approach, where you'd say, okay, we have to move forward together. We're not moving anywhere until we're all moving together. I can't drag you with, like, you can't be just, and you get the personality driven kind of leaders, and they they drag people forward that. But what happens when that person's gone? Anyway, so there's that kind of idea of a leadership style that, again, kind of models the way that we can be as humans towards one another, gracious towards one another, understanding that we're doing our best or we're trying our best, understanding that we don't all have the same toolkit and helping people to explore what tools they do have and helping them to make the best of them and to contribute towards whatever the goal is of your group, organization, cause, mission, that kind of thing. So that was the embryo was looking at. I called it upside down to start with because I didn't have any other language for it. I thought, well, upside down, it's the opposite of what the other way was, which is top down pointing. No, it's actually like how can the leader be a facilitator for change by empowering all the other part of the team, group, community around them. Yeah. So that was that. So that's changed to regenerative because regenerative is now a word that kind of is gaining traction in the world, and people kind of perhaps understand that a little bit more. Probably to move on from the word sustainable to regenerative, which is again, it's about adding life. So it's actually not just maintaining life, but building new life and building new growth and to be able to do that with the people around you. There's the regenerative leadership side of that. And obviously we live in a world that could do with a bit of regeneration instead of take and digging holes in the ground and then, those that go, well, let's not take, but let's try and take a little bit and a little bit back. No. Let's try and look at a way that we can support the planet so that it supports all of life. And so, all of that sort of stuff.
No, that is so amazing. It's really cool to hear you talk about that and your vision. And I think because I've always wanted to not always, but since I was like in my early teens, I'm 19 now, but when I was like 14, I've always been like trying to figure out how I can do something of my own and do my own business sort of thing, like the whole entrepreneurship thing. But then I got to a point where I was like, this is just not aligned. Like what business is, I don't want to do business if this is what business is, like taking in, like you have to be unethical or, and sort of, I think it's an innate human want to be in control and power and on the top. But I was like, doesn't mean we have to like feed into that, like we can focus on collaboration over competition and come together.
Yep.
And so I think it's really exciting, and thank you for sharing about it.
No, well, it's good. I like that Darwin had this. No, there's a saying that's quoted about from Darwin all the time, and I think has influenced our culture over the last 200 years or whatever it was since he was taught it, and it's survival of the fittest. We've heard that, and it's kind of it's stripped it right back down to this. But the idea is that you have to be the fittest to survive. Therefore, you have to be the best at what you do to survive. Otherwise, you won't. But when you look back at what and that has led to this whole development or support of the whole competition and win at all costs kind of approach to life. It's probably supported it more than, but it's used to kind of back it up. So, because this is the way nature is. But I would suggest that that's not the way nature is at all. And in fact, it probably wasn't even what Darwin was saying either. But in fact, probably what he was talking about was more, and it's a bit hard to say, it's not as pithy as survival of the fittest, but it's actually, this is the wrong way to say it, but you'll kind of get the idea. It's death of the weakest. And so when you put it that way, and if you look at nature, that's often what happens is it's the weakest, then we can start to look at it. It's kind of a different spin on it, because you'll see that even in nature, in the animal kingdom, saw a little video the other day of a group like, I don't know what you call them, a herd of elephants were being attacked, and there were some little baby elephants, and what they did was all the big elephants got in a big circle around the little elephants, right? So that was and it's a kind of a story of they are the weakest, and even the group will support the weakest, right? So it's not survival of the fittest. They didn't just run off and leave the babies there. Like, it's a way that we look at culture and the way that we look at how we treat each other. When we start looking at it that way, there are so many ways that, in fact, really it is. When we look around at how we can support the weaker ones in our communities and how we can how we can honor them, and that's a big thing on, and it just hasn't. It's going to take a while to trickle down because it's just the other way of looking at it. You look at nature, and we talk even plants and all sorts of different things like that, and the insects and things, and even the health, the whole thing on health. But don't worry. Is you get this idea that we think that there's all these attackers around attacking everything, and all the David Attenborough movies. See these other predators attacking, but it's really that even in my veggie garden, there's the insects come and they take the dying leaves. They clean up the dying leaves. They clean up the dying. So there's this idea really that in fact there's a symbiosis that happens when you kind of when one creature lets go of something and another part of nature benefits from it. It's a bit hard, it's a bit hard to think about that sometimes. But here's the other thing I learned about plants is the stronger the plant is, the less the insects attack them. They don't like strong plants. They don't like the taste of them, so they'll actually go for the parts that are decaying and dying anyway. So it's quite helpful for the plant because they don't want that dying leaf there anyway, because it's just getting in the way of them growing strong and healthy. So it all serves a purpose. It's the same thing with bacteria. We have this, I think it's still a leftover from that whole devil thing, where we think that bacteria are terrible and horrible, but in fact they're the cleaner-uppers in nature, and they clean things up and they look after our bodies. In fact, bacteria live in our body. Like there's, I don't know, there's called like trillions apparently. It's living in our body and all over us, in our skin. They've got a whole bio thing on our skin and everywhere. And they're actually cleaning up, and they've got their own life cycle, and we're sustaining them with the parts of us that are dying off and regenerating. And and even in our sustaining, when we're processing food, it's the bacteria that kind of then converts that into the minerals and vitamins that our body can actually use. So they're pretty good little fellas, all those things.
All those trillions of little guys we have along for the ride.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's a really, the way you put it, it's a really beautiful way to look at the world and what's happening. Like, even though we might not be able to see why the cheetah attacking the little baby lion is good in hindsight, it makes sense because it's all a part of the one system, and it comes back to we are all one at the end of the day. And yeah, just the way you put it is really, really clear visual, and I really love that way of looking at it. So thanks for sharing that. I do want to be mindful of time because you've been so gracious blessing us with your time, and I cannot believe it's already been an hour. Crazy to me. There's so many things I wanted to talk about with you, but hopefully maybe sometime in the future we can talk again. Because
I'll be really happy to chat. Like I started writing a book, like again is my theory of how everything works and fits together and across a whole lot of different spheres of the planet, parts of the world now. But I've got halfway through that, and I lost the work, and it's been a hard slog to start again. But yeah, that's
wait, you lost what you had written?
Yeah, it was all
no.
blind.
That's so painful.
It was very discouraging. Yeah. But anyway, maybe it'll be the second time around.
What's a positive you can extrapolate from that? Well, if you do, I would definitely be number one fan of that book if it does come back into fruition. So let us know if that comes back on the agenda. I was wondering, is there anything in particular that has been coming up for you in life, or that you want to talk about or share?
Oh, in life. there's only those couple of big things I think that I've shared already. Look around to see where life is and assuming the best in people in that sense. And, instead of jumping to a conclusion, just hold that tension for a bit of not knowing what was going on and how that, because potentially if you understood what was happening for them, you'll be able to connect with that. And so that again brings us that point of being able to connect, of of breaking down that us-them divide. And, some ways that's the future of the planet in some ways, but it's also how we can live more in peace with ourselves rather than seeing ourselves in a world where we need to be angry all the time, or we need to be fighting the system, or fighting, like, look where the good is. They were saying this thing about changes in society. There's actually less done by the revolution side of things. It's actually more by simply a better system came along and people adopted it. So it's actually about start being that system, start being that new way of being, start being that new way of relating to people, or that different way from everyone on social media or whatever. And that's when we will see the world that we want come to be.
Just like be the change you wish to see. Yeah.
Yeah, really. It's not new news, is it?
No, but it's a great reminder, because this is a thing that keeps coming up. Like, life is inherent, it's simple, but it's like so hard to execute because there's all this stuff coming in to just cloud our vision and everything. So it's maybe simple stuff that we should know, but it's always great to have the reminders and being put in different words. So thank you very much. I want to ask you something, but also if you need to go, I completely understand and don't feel like, do you have time?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
But please don't feel obligated.
No, that's right.
I was just wondering, with your, you've been vegan for 2 years. What, what made you go vegan?
Okay. I wouldn't say that I'm vegan, but I'm definitely, because vegan is a philosophy as much as anything.
Whole food, plant-based, you messaged me actually, that's what you said, sorry.
Yeah. And look, it all comes part of this. I see it as all part of this big picture. I started studying around health when Corona hit, and there was a number of rabbit holes that went down there. We'll stay away from some of the stuff. But I came to see that in the same way that there were some key influences in the Christian journey that have altered the trajectory of the Christian church and made it what it is today, which is kind of a twisted version of what Jesus was talking about. In the same way, we've got a twisted way of how we work, how our bodies work as humans. And Louis Pasteur in the, what was it? That was the 1800s. He was a big character that came out with these ideas that there were these monster germs around everywhere, and they're all trying to attack us, and we had to kind of find weapons to shoot them down and to kill them and all that kind of stuff. But there was another way of looking at it as well, and that we as humans are defenseless unless we have all these special weapons against these invading armies of terrorist bacteria, and viruses that came up, which was another story about viruses. We won't go there. And so that was one way of looking at it, and that is basically the medical model we have today. It's kind of built. One guy was saying it's kind of built on the whole devil and goblins and evil spirits type of approach to life, as evil spirits are attacking us and there are devils around and they're going to try and get you and all that kind of stuff. It's the same story, except it's put into, medical terminology. So that's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is to say that human beings have developed over, let's say, I don't know, millions of years. I think we've been around for, let's say 1,000,000 years, and have evolved and developed systems and have evolved very, very well to be able to heal themselves, to be able to know what foods are right for them. All of those sorts of things have developed the way that we see with two eyes in front of us, the way that we have hands that can grab at fruit and various things like that are dexterous and have coloured vision that allow us to see the bright colours of different fruits and things around the place. And so we've developed this incredible system in our body to be able to heal ourselves and to look after ourselves. And really, when we look at our physiology, some would say that we're omnivores but it's taken the wrong way around, because it's looked at, well, we eat meat and we eat veggies, therefore we must be omnivores. Look at our systems, therefore it's an omnivore system. But no, like when you look at it and you compare it, and physiologists have done this over the years, and we're actually in a category called frugivores, frugivores. So our digestive systems are mainly developed to eat fruit, right? So, and a fruit is obviously something that you pluck, and our hands and even our intelligence is all around being able to grab and grasp a fruit and pluck it off. And another part of that, as you think through the physiology, what would we choose to eat if we were in a forest or in a field or somewhere, and we had no food supplies around us? And what would have been the easiest thing to do? Would we want to chow down on the grass? No, not really. Would we see a little rabbit and want to wring its neck and rip it apart and chomp down on it? Well, that doesn't really appeal, does it? Like, it's not naturally something that sits well with us. And then when we think, we go into, we see a tree and it's got a fruit on, yeah, that's perfect. And the same, yeah. So there's that kind of idea that there are the things that we are naturally adapted to based on our form and actually our stomachs and our digestive system as well. And animal products doesn't really sit in with our systems at all. And in fact, it's the animal products are really the leading cause of all the lifestyle diseases and degenerative diseases that we see around us today, from the different cancers to the heart problems, to diabetes, and all the itises. Itises are all to do with inflammation, and inflammation comes from the body is a healing response from the body. So it's all these itises are healing responses. We don't see them like that. We want to drug them out of existence, but the body trying to cope with toxins and get rid of toxins as they come into the body and are processed by the body. So that's my understanding of it. So animal products don't fit in there. They don't really fit for humans. So we're really optimized for sweet leafy green vegetables, some nuts and fruits. And that's our ideal diet. So I've kind of been on a journey. The whole food plant-based movement came in probably the 80s and so on, but there's been before that there was a whole other it was really a philosophy, but also an approach to health that just looked at our physiology and actually science, not medical, not pill science, but physiology science, and looked at what we were optimized for. And so that's the journey I went on, and I kind of, I've taken that on and going, yep. And it's made a difference, and certainly in more recent times, my wife has also taken it on, and there's been some big health benefits in that as well. And you think you're going to miss stuff, and like I was really into meat and wine and coffee and a whole lot of other sorts of things. Yeah, and not anymore. No, and do I miss it? Well, when you think of it being something that is deleterious to your body, that actually harms your body as you ingest it, you think, okay, yeah, maybe I should be a friend to my body, you know. And being, you know, you see I've got a few white hairs and these getting a little bit older. This is the decade probably that all those degenerative, sort of those what do they call them? Chronic diseases come to roost. So they've been evolving in your body for the last 20 years, 30 years with eating meat and processed foods, I suppose, is the other part of that. But the healing process is a whole bunch quicker. So they go, okay, I'm trying to jump ship, get onto it.
Have you got any, what has been your experience so far on it? Like, is there anything that you've noticed within how you've been doing on the new?
Oh, well, I lost 14 kilos, I suppose, in weight. And certainly the energy's been fine. I never tended to get sick anyway, but certainly that, like I'm more confident around that. And I've dropped some of the other medications, like I had some cholesterol lowering medication and different things. Well, yeah, that was the main one. I've stopped taking that, and my levels are lowering, even though I've stopped taking that. I was on fairly high dose, and now I'm not doing any. My doctors are conventional doctors at the moment, and the ones I don't see them very much. So, but they would say, "Oh, you've got to be on a statin. Everyone over 50 should be on a statin." I don't know about that. It's putting poisons in your body and some of this stuff. So it doesn't seem to be a natural way to help the body do all its healing that it needs to do. And it ends up that most of our medical system is kind of all around that, really just helping us deal with symptoms. And still the body's got to do the healing work. But in the meantime, while you're dealing with the symptoms, that's half of those symptoms are actually the body trying to heal itself. So if you're squashing them down, then it just means the symptom's going to come up in some other way as the body tries to deal with the toxicity or whatever that's going on in the body. Anyway.
No, well, Daryl, thank you so much for all of this and for your time. I really just want you to know that I truly do appreciate your time and coming to speak to me and all the insights and wisdom you've given us today. I really appreciate it and talking to you, and I really do hope we can talk again in the future, because there's just so many things I want to ask you.
No, I'll be happy to that. Thank you.
Is there anywhere that, if anyone's listening, they can find you that you would like to mention, or some?
Look, I've got a Facebook page called ArxDaz, and it was a bit of ArxDaz, ARXDAZ. So, and that's also, there's a page on LinkedIn that's a similar sort of thing. And I suppose that's the journey that I'll be taking some of this, the idea of regenerative work. Yeah, and if anyone's interested in connecting with me, you can see a little bit of my thinking through those pages, and obviously can reach out to me from there as well.
Okay, amazing. Well, I will stop this. If you're here listening, I just want to say I'm really grateful for you spending some time with us today. And if anything that Daryl said, or Daryl as a being and essence energy resonated with you, Daryl provided a link where anyone can book some time in his calendar to chat with him. And there's all the other stuff he mentioned where you can find him as well. Let me know, as always, I would love to hear any thoughts it sparked in you and your opinion on these things. The podcast's Instagram will be linked in the description, so you can contact us through there. Okay. I don't think I have much more to say right now. So, which is probably, you're like, thank fucking God, shut up. Anyways, I will see you next time. Have a good day. Peace and love. Goodbye.